Hello and welcome to our webinar. We're recording here from Tallinn in Estonia. So there's three of us sitting in the room here. My name's Adam Rang and I specialise in talking to location-independent entrepreneurs about how to start their companies in Estonia. I'll just very quickly introduce myself. I used to run my own company, and I first used to run it in the UK, and then I ran it in Estonia. So kind of I've been through the process myself of starting and running a company here. And now really delighted to be part of the E-Residency program where I help other people start companies here. So that's it about me.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Alex Wellman. I work as head of marketing here at E-Residency. Really happy to organize this event today as part of European Freelancers Week. This is the second year that European Freelancers Week is happening. There are 65 events happening around Europe aimed at small and medium companies, really trying to just help them with the challenges they're facing. So we're really happy to join you today and talk a little bit about the E-Residency in Estonia program and all of the details regarding how you can use this program to start your own company online.
Hello everybody, my name is Veske and I work in customer support in E-Residency. And I try to help everybody start their businesses, get the residency media ID. So I hope you enjoy our presentation, and I hope you get some answers to your questions.
Yeah, so one thing you might have noticed is that there's quite a lot of different accents and different nationalities here. So I think we've actually got 9 different nationalities on our team now. So American, British, Mexican, Indian, Ukrainian, French, and even some Estonians as well. Perfect. So I'm going to start off with a very quick introduction to Estonia. So we're located in, I'm hoping some of you have visited Estonia already, or at the very least heard of Estonia, but we're located in Northern Europe, the northernmost Baltic state, on the eastern edge of the European Union. And the program we're going to talk about today, E-Residency, doesn't require you to actually visit Estonia in order to benefit from it. But of course, you are always more than welcome to come to Estonia. But with Estonia, it's always been quite a challenge actually to get people to physically migrate here. So E-Residency, as we're going to come across, is kind of one way that our country is able to make itself bigger and kind of make more friends around the world without necessarily being able to encourage people to come here. So we're going to take you quickly through the program. I'll just start off by talking about the Estonian language as well. Now, the Estonian language has a lot of very interesting letters which form a lot of very interesting words. So I wanted to start with the good news that you don't have to learn Estonian in order to run your company in Estonia. Alex and I are both learning Estonian at the moment, but I don't think we're going to embarrass ourselves by trying to pronounce these words. Maybe Alex, you can pronounce one of these for us.
Yes, sure. No, I think you guys would do a perfect job. So some of the words are öde, which means actually a night work. Then there's jää, which is the edge of the ice, and õlletõht, which is a beer stomach.
So Estonian is a beautiful language. However, because Estonia it's a Nordic country, it considers itself to be a Nordic country, so the level of English here is really high. So Estonia's digital infrastructure works in English. Our private companies operate in English. It's very easy to run a company in English here and deal with anyone you need to deal with in either the public or the private sector in English. And Russian as well, and various private sector organizations are also adding additional languages, including Finnish and Ukrainian, and we're hoping that there'll be more in the future. Now, don't worry, this isn't a history lesson. However, I just wanted to say that Estonia was founded in 1918, or the Republic of Estonia was founded in 1918. But the past 99 years have been quite difficult for Estonians, and the country only regained its independence in 1991. And a key thing to know about 1991 is that Estonia was broke. It had very kind of few resources, and it had a very poor infrastructure which needed to be rebuilt from scratch. And Estonia also has a population spread across quite a large distance. So you might think that Estonia is a small country, but it's actually bigger than Denmark. What is really small, though, is the population. There's just 1.3 million people living here. So it's a real challenge to provide government services over that kind of large distance, especially back in 1991 when Estonia was re-emerging out of the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, fortunately, August 1991 was actually the exact same month that the first servers for the World Wide Web were switched on. So as it happened, Estonians recognized very early on about the potential of the internet to transform our lives, and a lot of investment went into creating a digital society. And so part of that was about the population spread across a large distance, realized that by delivering services online instead of queuing up at government departments, it was a more efficient way that people could interact with the government. So people were given their own digital identities. So they have digital identity cards which they can plug into their computers. And then they use those cards to authenticate themselves and interact with the government, then access public services and private services. In actual fact, there's only 3 things you can't do digitally in Estonia: get married, get divorced, and transact property. So that's not because we don't have the technology to do those things. It's because we think it's probably a really bad idea if at any time of the day or night, at the click of a button, you can get married or divorced, or we don't want you playing poker and ending up kind of selling your house, giving away your house in the middle of the night. Now, because of this kind of, partly because of this digital society, Estonia has developed a really excellent business environment. So, Alex, if you want to kind of talk through the business environment we have here.
Sure. So I think it's important to recognize first that there are already a lot of people taking advantage of this business environment. In fact, E-Residents have started over 22,500 new companies in Estonia using E-Residency. And the reason is due to the business environment here in Estonia. So, of course, as an E-Resident, when you start a company in Estonia, you own a trusted company inside of the European Union. And you can use this company to access all the tools you need to grow your business, no matter where you happen to live. So, for example, if PayPal is not available to you in your country, when you start a company in Estonia with E-Residency, then you can access those sorts of tools. Another big advantage is minimal bureaucracy. Almost everything in Estonia can be done online. Paperwork is almost non-existent. We use digital signatures here to sign contracts and other business-related paperwork, and almost all the government interactions are done online. So another point is membership in the EU, as I mentioned. This means that your company will have access to the single market in certain respects, and also low cost of doing business. Because everything is done digitally, things like accounting and virtual office services are low cost and easy to access and available to everyone. And then this remote management as well. Using your secure digital ID card, you can access all the tools you need to run your business remotely. So this is really good for freelancers who like to take advantage of their freedom to travel. Their business is extremely portable. If they say they want to spend if you're a freelancer and say you want to spend time in Thailand on the beach, you can run your business securely using your digital ID card. And of course, we have simple taxation here, which we'll talk about later. But many people, we're not meant to be a tax haven here, but many people do find it an advantage to running a company here. And
yeah, so one of the biggest success stories that came out of this business environment, I'm hoping that most of you know that Skype is Estonian. Estonians are very, very proud of Skype. And kind of the effect of Skype in Estonia is a bit like a really good international business school, like suddenly appearing in our small country. So it suddenly created a lot of skills here and a lot of money and a lot of ambition. So people involved in the success of Skype then went off and reinvested that money into Estonia to create other companies here. And they're collectively kind of nicknamed the Estonian Mafia. You'll see on social media a lot hashtag Estonian Mafia when people talk about these kind of companies. And it's because the joke is that Estonian companies have a disproportionate dominance in digital services. So after Skype, kind of TransferWise was the next big one that was set up by the first employee of Skype, actually. So I'm sure many of you actually use TransferWise already in your businesses. Pipedrive is another big company that maybe some of you use. Starship Technologies, they make those little robots, delivery robots that you might have seen kind of on the streets in certain countries lately. Taxify is a competitor to Uber. They just entered a few European markets as well. So these are all really interesting companies that have come out of Estonia's business environment. And so we've talked about our business environment a lot. And we've also mentioned that we have ID cards. That means we can plug them into our computers, and no matter where we are in the world, we can access that business environment. So the reason why E-Residency came about is because kind of people looked at the way the world is changing, the fact that, so this is an image which has been circulating on social media quite a lot. I'm sure some of you will have seen it. The world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. The world's most popular media owner creates no content. The most valuable retailer has no inventory. And Estonians decided maybe we can put our country on this scale as well. And even though Estonia only has 1.3 million people, maybe we can be a large country through E-Residency by inviting other people to use our digital infrastructure as well. So, you know, there's only 1.3 million people living in the country who, and at the moment it's the citizens and residents, or it was only citizens and residents who could get the ID cards. So Estonia created a third category called e-resident so that anyone in the world could get access to our digital infrastructure as well. And we've mentioned plugging them into a computer. This is what it looks like. There's various kind of USB connections available on the market, but it's very easy to plug it straight into a USB port. And so the program was launched at the end of 2014, and then it went into public beta mode a couple of months later. So the main values that have been guiding the program, the reason why people are signing up is for remote management, the idea that you can plug it in anywhere in the world, access to fintech services. So Alex mentioned about PayPal. That's a major reason why the e-residency program is growing in some parts of the world where people are blocked from using certain kind of services online. And then hassle-free administration. So this is probably one of the biggest reasons why people inside Europe sign up, because you can use business service providers here at lower cost and deal with less bureaucracy here than you can elsewhere. So since the program was launched, actually these statistics are already out of date. So we have about 25,000 applications now. They've created 2,400 companies. So there's been a real speed up in the growth of the program very recently.
Yeah, and so you can talk a little bit more practically of how exactly you become an e-resident. So I think it's important to mention that there are a lot of digital identity solutions out there. Many people, you can use a Google account to identify yourself, but really the difference between e-residency and some of those other solutions is this is a government-issued digital identity. The Estonian government issues you this ID card just in the same way that they issue their citizens and residents their digital ID cards. So how do you become an e-resident? It's 4 steps. It takes about 1 month, and there is a state fee of 100 euros. So we have a secure application form online, e-resident.gov.ee, and then you do wait for the background check. As I mentioned, this is a government ID card, so we do check your background with some of the databases. And then, of course, you pick up your e-residency ID card, digital ID card, at one of Estonia's embassies or consulates around the world. So, of course, Estonia is a small country, so this network is a bit limited right now, but it is very broadly available throughout Europe. So if you're a freelancer in Europe and you're looking to take advantage of this program, in the capital city in your country, you can most likely find a pickup location. And of course, our goal is to spread this and open more of these locations in the next year. And then as soon as you have your digital ID card as an e-resident, you can immediately begin accessing some of these services. The main one being starting our company, registering a company, and accessing financial tools for that company online. So this is our website. As I mentioned, we have three categories here: how to become an e-resident, how to start a company, and how to run a company. And you should find most of the resources you need here should answer all of your questions regarding e-residency. So we can go through it a little more in detail now. So companies can be established online in about a day in Estonia once you have your e-residency digital ID card. And then the big advantage is you own this company yourself. You incorporate yourself. But we do recommend that you use a business service provider because you are required to have a local address, a virtual office address here in Estonia. But there are many companies that offer this for a very a good fee. So we do recommend you use a business service provider when you're registering your company. And then, of course, you just need to check that your desired company name is available in the Estonian Business Register. And all of the official correspondence while you're registering your company is done via email. So this can all be done remotely online from wherever you happen to live.
So Estonia is very proud to have received the Guinness World Record for the fastest time to register a company, which was 18 minutes. However, it's usually a couple of hours to complete this process. But for most people, it's within a day. We can just have a quick chat about banking options as well then. So there are two we've split them up into traditional banks and fintech companies. So what you're going to need for your company is an IBAN account, an international bank account number. So you can either get one of those from a bank that offers a bank account, or you can there's a number of fintech firms now that offer IBANs too. So for the traditional banks, the downside there is that you do have to come and visit Estonia in order to open an account. They require you to do it in person at a branch at the time being. They are trialing remote ways of opening accounts, but for the time being, you do have to come visit Estonia. We know that's not ideal, and we're working to change that. But the banks are private companies, and we can't compel them to change their rules. But we can work with them to make it easier for e-residents to set up their accounts. And to be honest, a lot of e-residents and freelancers, they do come to Estonia to do this, and they do consider it to be a valuable investment. And then they get a visit to Estonia at the same time. The most important thing we can say about opening a bank account in Estonia with a traditional bank is to please speak to a business service provider before booking any travel. They work very closely with the banks, and they help their customers open bank accounts. So the key difference is that the banks do not issue advice to people in advance of a meeting. They're not going to tell you whether or not you should travel to Estonia to open an account. They will just say, if you want to find out, come and open an account. However, the business service providers work really closely with the banks, and they have a very good understanding of who gets accepted and who gets rejected. And that's why, we really don't want anyone to try and come to Estonia if they can't open a bank account. And that's why we say speak to a business service provider first. And then the other category here is fintech companies. So, we don't consider it ideal that you have to travel anywhere in order to do this. We believe that you should be able to open a complete company with banking anywhere in the world. So at the start of this year, we started talking about a lot of exciting changes that were happening in the fintech industry as they started offering their own accounts. The key difference with their accounts is these companies aren't licensed as banks, so you're not going to be able to get overdrafts or loans, and your money with them isn't going to be guaranteed in the same way that it is. If a bank can't return your money, then there's compensation that you automatically receive. However, the key difference is that banks are regulated in a way that allows them to lend out money and take those risks, whereas because fintech companies aren't covered in that way, it means that they have to hold on to your money. So if you give your money to a fintech company, then they have to store it in an account, and they don't make any money from lending it out to other people. So that's the key difference. However, if you get an account with a fintech company, then you can still use it in many of the same ways. In fact, a lot of the fintech companies will boast of a lot more services that they have in addition to kind of traditional banking. These fintech companies are really keen to kind of position themselves as a way for you to do bookkeeping and get additional features like that. So this year, Holvi, the Finnish fintech company, became the first to launch a dedicated account for e-residence. So now you can open that entirely online from anywhere in the world. There's two other options we mentioned here that we're still kind of in the very early stages of understanding how we can integrate them to e-residency and how suitable they are for e-residence. But e-residents have started using a bank, fintech company, sorry, called Paysera. And another one is TransferWise Borderless, which had a really big launch early in the year. And you know, we're not just mentioning them because they do coincidentally happen to be an Estonian company, but TransferWise launched their borderless account earlier this year, and e-residents have started using it. The feedback's been really good. I think it's a little bit more limited at the moment in that it's not going to be for people in all countries, and they don't yet have a payment card. So Holvi do have a payment card. However, you know, it's really interesting to see kind of the development of the fintech industry, and as they roll out more services, and we're watching very closely, and we want to get feedback from e-residents and you guys about which of these services work the best for you. But the key message is you can use you can get a bank account with a traditional bank, or you can go to the fintech industry, and you can use any of them to hold, receive, and pay money, as well as pay yourself and pay in share capital and things like that, which we'll come on to later.
So another sort of service that e-resident entrepreneurs always need to run their businesses, of course, are payment services. So of course, PayPal is one option that's available, which is you're able to connect your bank account or your fintech account with these services. Holvi has their own, as we mentioned before, has their own sort of payments service called the Holvi Store, which you can, if you're doing e-commerce or accepting payments for services, you can integrate that directly with your Holvi account. So that's an option. There's also Braintree, which is a product owned by PayPal, which I'm sure you're familiar with all of these. But Braintree is something else you can use as an Estonian company to accept payments globally. And Payment Wall is another one. They have a new product also called Passport, where they're integrating e-residency, and so it's another service that's available to e-resident entrepreneurs to accept global payments for their Estonian company. And so we always caution people, or just let them know that when possible, use the Estonian version of the website to sign up. So for PayPal, for instance, it's paypal.ee. And if you are an e-resident who'd like to set up a payment account with your banking, we always mention that you should, if you're having any problem connecting your bank or fintech account with a payment provider, contact support, and oftentimes they can help you accomplish this. Because all these sort of borderless banking and payment services and borderless business issues are new, and we're all still sort of working through them together. So sometimes, even if it at first looks like it might not work, oftentimes we can solve the problem and make sure you have all the tools you need to continue doing your business.
So next topic is taxes, which is a really big one we get asked about all the time. And the real big challenge of providing advice on taxation is that it really is dependent on your company's circumstances. And you know, Estonia can't unilaterally decide where you should pay your taxes, because you need to pay your taxes based on existing tax rules in the countries that you're operating in. So e-residency is not tax residency. E-residency doesn't mean that you necessarily have to pay your taxes here. And what makes it confusing as well is that some e-residents do pay taxes here, and as many of them don't. So if an e-resident does pay taxes in Estonia, then it's based on what e-residency has enabled them to do by creating a company that is legitimately tax resident here. E-residency alone is not going to necessarily mean that you would pay your taxes here automatically. But I can discuss kind of very generally. International tax rules mean that you have to pay your tax obligations is where your company generates value, and you companies, are we still online? Sorry, we don't really think it's fair that kind of large companies with large accounting departments can figure out their international tax obligations, and it can be very difficult if you're one person on your own to work out these things as well. So as a result of that, the tax department in Estonia has a dedicated email address where you can ask them about your personal situation. You can tell them about the company that you've registered, or where you do your freelancing, who your clients are, and you can ask them for advice on where your tax obligations are. If you do pay taxes in Estonia, then I'll cover that very briefly, that we do have a tax system that's it's considered the most competitive in the OECD, and the reason for that is that we have a simple flat tax of 20% on distributed profits and 0% on undistributed profits. So the point of that system is that if you keep your money inside the company and you use that money to grow your company, then you're not going to get taxed. And that system was developed in order to encourage entrepreneurial growth, to encourage the growth of companies. So it's a tax system that gets a lot of praise internationally. But yeah, please do speak to your own qualified tax advisor, or contact our tax department directly. And I know this is a funny thing to say, but our tax department does actually have really good customer service. And then finally, just going to go through share capital. So the share capital for a limited company in Estonia is 2,500 euros. However, you don't need to pay that in when you start your company. You can click to defer that. The only issue is that you have to pay it in before you pay dividends out. So what most e-residents do is they get their company started and they defer share capital. It does mean that they're personally liable up to that amount of 2,500 euros instead of their company. However, most companies established through e-residency, and I'm sure like many of you operating as freelancers, kind of don't have that same kind of risk of liability for your companies as other industries do. And then usually after a year, when companies are more successful, then they will pay the 2,500 euro share capital in order to then start paying their first dividends out straight away. So it's very easy. You describe the payment into your bank account or your IBAN account as share capital, and then you can get a certificate which you can give to your accountant, who will ensure it's registered. And I should probably say just a note on limited companies, because we are talking about limited companies, and often we get asked, especially by kind of one-person companies or freelancers, if they can register as sole traders or sole proprietors instead. And in most countries, that does make sense. However, if you operate as a sole trader in Estonia, it does come with additional obligations which are more suited to being an actual physical resident of Estonia. And the reason why we encourage people to set up limited companies is because the hassle and the kind of bureaucracy and costs are kind of much lower here than they are as even operating as sole traders in other countries. And that's why a lot of freelancers kind of choose to set up a limited company in Estonia instead of operating as a sole trader in their own country. I kind of just finally, before we kind of move on to questions, just wanted to talk very generally about e-residency. So we're aiming for 10 million by 2025. And we're seeing a lot of really fast growth on the program now. So, when the program was first launched almost 3 years ago, there was so much that just wasn't very good. For a start, you had to visit Estonia 4 times in order to complete the process of setting up a company and getting banking. So we could offer people location-independent companies, but the entire process to do it was not location-independent and not ideal at all. So it's only very recently that kind of a lot of the biggest challenges are being worked through, and we're seeing a lot of very fast growth on the program. So our job is to get 10 million e-residents by 2025. And as that community grows, we're seeing a lot more companies that want to offer services to e-residents. So Holvi is one example. A lot of fintech companies and other kind of business services all want to specialize in looking after e-residents. particularly because as an e-resident, we mentioned you have a secure digital identity, and this makes it really easy for companies to onboard you, to authenticate you kind of straight away, whereas companies usually have to pay a lot more and go through a lot more hassle to identify their customers, to go through this KYC, know your customer process. So the e-residency community is increasingly attractive and increasingly a good market for companies, which is why there's a lot more investment going into offering services for e-residents. And it creates a loop where, you know, the more valuable e-residency becomes, the more companies that want to invest in e-residency and make it even more valuable. And then as part of e-residency, you know, it's a bit of a strange thing to talk about at the moment, but we believe that e-residency is going to become normal because more countries are going to compete for you, and they're going to tell you, they're going to do webinars with you like this and tell you why they've got great public services and a great business environment that can benefit you. So the more countries that offer kind of e-residency, will improve the quality of governance globally. But we really believe kind of Estonia's e-residency program is a global standard. We have a fantastic business environment, and it's increasingly being integrated with services from other countries too. And then finally, you know, a big part for why Estonia is doing this, we mentioned earlier that you don't pay your taxes here if you don't owe them here. But Estonia offers e-residency because we're a very small population, and it's a way for us to make friends around the world. And when people do set up companies here, even if they don't owe their taxes here, they end up doing more business with Estonians and bringing more to our economy as well. But it's also, that happens in return for the way we can help remove barriers to entrepreneurship in their own countries. So there are just far too many people around the world right now who aren't able to start companies or run companies just because of where they live. They might be financially excluded because of financial services aren't available, or they're not affordable, or just the cost and hassle of running a business in a particular location is too high, or their companies just might not be trusted online. If they're outside of the EU, if they're in jurisdictions that are less likely to be trusted. So we see e-residency as a way to help end financial exclusion and democratize access to entrepreneurship globally. So I think that's...
Just before we move on to questions, I just wanted to point out a few resources we have just to make sure you're aware of them. So after the call, or after the webinar today, in an hour or two, you should receive in your email inbox a new article that Adam, who's been speaking here, put together recently. It's a comprehensive new guide to almost everything you need to know regarding how to apply for e-residency, how to start a company, and how to access banking and financial tools. So you'll get that in your inbox. Another thing is for the month of October, the business service providers that we have mentioned before, available on our website under the Run a Company tab. They're offering a bunch of special offers for October to help you get started with starting a company with e-residency. And it's a celebration of Freelancers Week and a celebration of just helping people get started with a company in the month of October. So many of those resources are also available on our blog on Medium. If you're familiar with the Medium blogging platform, it's medium.com/e-residency-blog. So visit us there, and there's a ton of good user stories and very practical information about how to start a company with e-residency. So we're going to move on to questions. I see a few coming up in the question pane here. So let's see.
So the first question I can see is on double taxation from Florian. Do you have experience with double taxation in Austria? So Estonia has quite a large number of agreements for the avoidance of double taxation. I think at the last count it was 59. I think we've just signed one with Japan. But yes, we have tax treaties with every EU company, every EU country, as well as many other kind of key countries where e-residency is growing, like Ukraine and Turkey. So yes, we do have an agreement to avoid double taxation with Austria and with every other EU country. And yeah, that means your revenue won't be taxed twice in the same country. Yeah, sorry, your revenue won't be taxed twice by two countries.
I see Josef asked a few questions about banking, and as we mentioned, on our website we do have a number of options for banking, and I think the important thing to remember is that the two main options for you right now are traveling to Estonia, working with a service provider, coming here and opening a traditional bank account, but definitely working with that service provider before coming here. And also looking at Holvi as an option to access business banking completely online. And many e-residents are finding that as a good option for banking. And then, of course, we're always willing to help with other. If you identify another fintech or other service that you'd like to see if it works with e-residency, please let us know, and we can try to help you with that.
So Joseph mentioned that he's already spoken to one business service provider, and they told him it was difficult. So yeah, part of the reason why we do tell you to speak to business service providers is that if they think there's a reason why your account might not be approved, and unfortunately sometimes it can be, because they don't consider your connection to Estonia to be strong enough. That's not ideal, but that's why we, if you can't get an account with a traditional bank in Estonia, then we would recommend looking at the fintech companies as well. And the article we're going to send after this has an overview of different fintech options at the moment. And then we're hoping that there's actually quite a few more on the way.
So another question that Paul has asked is, can one register an existing company, E-Residency? So E-Residency is issued to you personally. So you can establish a new company online using E-Residency. But if you want to establish a subsidiary, or a donor of the company would be another company in another country, you do have to come to Estonia and do it through the notary. The benefit of E-Residency is that later, if you have registered the subsidiary in Estonia, you can manage it remotely.
From my personal experience, actually, I started my company in the UK, and then I decided that I wanted to have this company as Estonian instead. So I set up the Estonian company, and then I effectively had two companies side by side, but it was the same brand. It was effectively just changing the address on the website, and then changing the invoicing to clients. But yes, I found it just opening a new company in Estonia, and then I ran them side by side for a while until I realized actually I wasn't using or benefiting from the UK one anymore when I had the Estonian one. So then I made the UK one dormant. Yeah.
Let's see. So someone's asking about, so Yuri is asking about, please provide the steps to open a company in the correct order.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So yeah, you apply for e-residency first, and then then you'll receive your e-residency card that you can collect at the embassy or a pickup location. And then once you have that, you can register a company within a day. You wouldn't be able to. The next thing to do is to speak to a business service provider. So you can do it yourself online, register your company. We do recommend speaking to a business service provider because one of the key things you do need is an address in Estonia, and that's not because that is because it's an EU requirement. It's an EU requirement that companies have to have an address in their country. However, Estonia fully supports location-independent entrepreneurs and freelancers, so there's no requirement for you to visit that address or anything like that. And your mail you're going to get is going to be email, official kind of mail from the government. So you need to get a business. When you do go to register your company as an e-resident, you need to have that address ready, and you just need to have a few questions about your company ready, like very basic questions, kind of what is the name of it, and what's its area of activity, and then you can register the company. Most e-residents, they speak to the business service provider, they get that address, and then they speak to business service providers about starting the company and accounting and issues like that at the same time. And then once you have your company, then you speak to the financial services provider to get an IBAN account. I mean, you could speak to a business service provider in advance to get their opinions on which one might suit you best. But when it comes to setting up a business account, you're going to need that company already in order to then attach because you're applying for the IBAN account on behalf of the company. Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to address one point here. Mohammed asked if he can move to Estonia and have residency to run the business. So this is something we just want to make clear, of course, that e-residency is a digital ID, so it's used for accessing government services and private services online. Doesn't provide the right to travel or move to Estonia. But Estonia has recently launched a new program called Startup Visa, which you can apply for, meaning you can start a company remotely using e-residency and then apply for a startup visa. So there's information on that on the Startup Estonia website. So if you do want to physically move here, starting a company with e-residency might be a pathway to do that.
So I saw a few questions there about the tax treaties between countries and where you can learn about them. So as Alex mentioned before, we have an e-residency blog in Medium. And Alex will send you the link by email later. But if you go to our blog, you can see that the Estonian Tax and Customs Board, very friendly board, has also published an article on how to e-residents pay taxes. From this article, you can also find the link to all tax treaties Estonia has with other countries.
So Joseph has asked about share capital. I think Joseph has an account with Holby and wants to know about paying share capital. So, to give you a broad overview of the situation here, when the legislation was written in Estonia for how to pay share capital, the fintech companies weren't around. It just wasn't an issue back then. So the assumption was that you would always pay share capital from an Estonian bank account. Back then, E-Residency didn't exist either. So now the legislation, our legal opinion, is that the existing law does allow you to pay share capital into a Holby account or any other account with a financial service provider outside of Estonia. There is some confusion about this because obviously the law isn't entirely clear. However, when people start paying in that share capital, then that will help us confirm that the existing legislation does allow that. Now, the reason why we can't give you a very clear answer right now is because the decision to accept that share capital is done by the business register, which is independent of it's independent of government decision, so that's under the jurisdiction of the courts. So the concern you might have is what would happen if I have an account with a financial services provider and it's rejected because it's decided that actually you do need to have an Estonian bank account in order to pay share capital. So what I would really want to emphasize is that Estonia has changed quite a lot of laws in order to accommodate e-residents and to make sure our business environment is suitable for e-residents. And if there's any issue of paying share capital, then we would work very hard to resolve that as early as possible. It sounds like you do actually have an issue of trying to pay it in. So the article that we're going to send over has at the very, very bottom, it's got my personal contact details, it's got our team contact details. If you can get in touch with us directly, we'll help you do that straight away.
So Julian is asking if there's an all-in service provider that includes tax accounting, virtual company address, and everything. Yeah, so I would just say actually most of the service providers on our website, under Run a Company, under the Business Services tab, most of them do offer all of the services combined. And the costs are very affordable, starting I think roughly around 50 euros a month for many of them. All of these companies here have of course, experience working with e-residency and come recommended by us. So definitely look there when you're looking for service providers to get started with your company in Estonia.
I can see Ihaz mentioned, is it really worth working with a business service provider to register an address for the company? Is it hard to do by myself? If you do have an address in Estonia, then you are welcome to use that. If perhaps you know someone in Estonia with an address, if there's another way you can get hold of address, then yeah, you're more than welcome to. I don't think the business service providers, they're not going to be making much money off addresses. Their businesses are really around the kind of accountancy and virtual offices. So most e-residents do tend to use a business service provider when they're setting up their company and getting their address. But no, it's not mandatory at all. You're welcome to use your own address if you have your own address in Estonia.
All right, we're just taking a look through the questions here to make sure there's anything else we can help with.
Can I start a company with another e-resident? My wife. So yes, absolutely. It does tend to be that a large proportion of kind of freelancers and one-person companies, like solo entrepreneurs, are attracted to e-residency because of the way you can benefit from lowering your cost of accountancy and lowering your hassle running your business online. However, it's not just for one-person companies. So, you know, one of the largest business service providers to e-residency, Leap-In, specializes in one-person companies. But there's many others as well. There's One Office, which provides more comprehensive business services for larger companies. There's a range of business service providers who you can use, you know, if you're not a one-person company. So no, it's definitely not just for one-person companies.
So Mario is asking if there's any additional requirements for applications from non-EU countries for e-residency. So we always like to say, of course, that e-residency is, anyone can apply for e-residency. Anyone in the world can apply to become an e-resident. So we have many people outside of the EU. I think our biggest group right now is from Ukraine. So many people are becoming e-residents and accessing the services in Europe, you know, with e-residency. So of course, you're welcome to apply.
So I guess when you start your company, one additional consideration is that if you're outside the EU, then not only do you need an address, but you also need a contact at that address. That's not a big issue though, because the same business service providers that provide the address also can provide the contact detail as well. I should mention, I don't know how many people on the call this would affect, but US citizens have a bit more trouble accessing banking because there's these FATCA requirements. That must be a pain for you, Alex. That sometimes makes it more difficult for banking providers to serve US citizens. The only other people who don't really benefit as much are, there's this financial action task force that has a list of high risk, high category, non-cooperative countries whose residents are barred from kind of, or very heavily restricted from accessing international finance. This is a very small number of countries, and just off the top of my head, I think there's 7 on there at the moment, and it's like North Korea, Syria, Iraq, Iran. So it's important to emphasize that these people don't have difficulty accessing international banking because of who they are or their nationality. It's because of where they live and just international regulations at the moment. So people from those countries living elsewhere are able to benefit from e-residency. But for the vast majority of people, no, there's no considerations apart from if you're outside the EU, then you're going to need to contact that person at that address too.
So Leonard has asked something about the e-residency Digi-ID. And the question is, how long is the e-residency Digi-ID valid for? So it is a national document and it's a digital document, and the certificates currently are valid for 3 years. So if you apply, you can use the document for 3 years, and then you would need to renew the document. Currently, renewing the document needs applying for a new document, but as we mentioned before, our program is constantly improving, and we are working on ways making the application process easier. So the time frame, 3 years, currently comes from the EU law. But we are working on making this better as well.
All right, so Casey is asking us, curious if most e-residents start businesses clustered in a particular industry. So I think if you're arriving here on this webinar from EU Freelancers Week, I think many freelancers, of course, work in tech and work online and can work from their computer. And I do think this is the people that are really benefiting the most from e-residency. You know, if you have the ability to be location independent and you work in, you're a designer or you're a web developer or something like that, of course. But we also have certain people that are using e-residency for e-commerce. Of course, there are additional considerations for rules regarding, you know, physical shipping of goods and things like that. But yeah, I think most e-residents are the freelancer, small, medium enterprise type people who work online.
I'm trying to think of the most interesting or unusual companies that we've seen over the past couple of years. One that immediately comes to mind is there's a few people in the UK who make eco-friendly toilet paper, and they actually won the Mayor of London's Entrepreneurs of the Year award for this year actually. Really pleased that they decided to run their business through E-Residency. So yeah, you do get some like really interesting kind of products and offline companies, bricks and mortar companies, but it does tend to be mostly online e-commerce stores, freelancers. There's quite a lot of questions coming in on taxation. I can see VAT. So VAT, the limit is 16,000 euros. If you earn more than 16,000 euros, then you have to register for VAT. Yeah, quite a few questions on kind of more detailed issues on tax. I would say that if you want to discuss your specific circumstances, then the Estonian Tax Board is a really good place to start. But bear in mind as well that we're talking about a mixture of personal tax and company tax. So personal tax tends not to be too confusing for e-residents because they usually know kind of which country that they are personally tax resident in, and you know, even if you're traveling, if you're a digital nomad, you tend to still have kind of one country that you consider your home country, where you have an address and where you want to build up your social security and pensions and things like that. So personal tax residency isn't such an issue, but it's company tax obligations are more confusing, and how you pay them out from, so you would be paying them out to you as a foreign-based employee of your Estonian company. So it would be Estonian tax rules for paying them out. But if you want to understand which country that tax money should actually go to, who your accountant should be sending it to, then please do speak to your own tax advisor or speak to our tax department.
So Adam, there's quite a few questions here about UK citizens and residents starting companies with e-residency, and especially in light of Brexit. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the benefits you see with that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people from the UK signing up lately, and you know, part of that is that we get a lot of media coverage around Brexit and British citizens signing up. You know, it tends to be though that when I speak to British e-residents, they're most likely to be people who are already doing business with customers across Europe, and they would consider it more useful in the longer term to have an EU company and trade in euros and kind of be plugged into the European business environment even after Brexit, so that they can continue doing business with them with greater ease. I would say that kind of access to the EU market is probably one area that's a little bit misunderstood about e-residency and setting up an EU company, because it's not, you know, you don't have to limit yourself to Europe for one thing. The reason, the way we sell e-residency, if you like, around the world is the fact that we believe e-residency makes it easier to conduct business online globally, no matter where your clients are. And it's really convenient being within the EU business environment for that, and to use the EU's legal frameworks. So obviously more people are going to benefit more than others, and if you have clients across Europe, then if you want to grow your business with a particular focus on Europe, then you know, it's certainly very convenient to have an EU company as well. And yeah, you know, British people signing up are more than welcome. At the same time, you know, e-residency isn't for everyone. If, you know, one example I live, you might be able to tell from my accent, but I'm British too. And on my street in the UK, you know, there's a fish and chip shop, and that fish and chip shop isn't really going to benefit from e-residency. It doesn't need access to the single market. It doesn't need to trade in euros. It's not selling anything online. However, above that shop, you know, there might be someone who's running an e-commerce store, or who's running consulting services for clients globally and across Europe, and that's the person who's going to benefit from being within the EU business environment.
Someone's asking just in a few words, Julian is asking in a few words if we could just describe the advantages of starting a company with e-residency versus founding a company with in Germany, for example. So I hope we did go through a lot of the advantages, of course, but in a few words, I would say the main advantage is just self-ownership. You don't have to appoint a local director. You start your company here. You control it remotely using your e-residency Digi ID card. You really control the company without having to go through some sort of major intermediary. Of course, using a business service provider is helpful, and we recommend that, but that's one big advantage. And of course, I think it's just the portability. Everything can be done online securely. No more faxing, or if you do that, or no more signing things on paper and then posting it to to the government or to some other office. So really, just ease of doing business, portability, self-ownership. These are some of the key things that I think make, and of course, Estonia's business environment as well. These are the things I think really make Estonia a unique place to set up a company, especially if you're a freelancer or someone who really values running your company location independently.
I mentioned I used to run a UK company and an Estonian company at the same time. The UK is a great place. It's a really easy place to set up and run a company. But with my Estonian company, for a start, the costs were a lot lower. I think in the UK, I paid kind of £50 per month just for a virtual office, and then you've got accounting on top of that. These are kind of services that Estonians have a really good, really competitive value. And then, the remote management, especially because I was traveling a lot of the time. And I actually had to shut down my business bank account for my UK company very recently. And so I had to print out a form and get it signed and then post it over to the UK. Estonia is a digital society. We can instantly do everything online. In fact, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but actually we were debating how to post a letter and where to get a stamp from and how these stamps work. I'd be sorry to say, that's the discussion we were having.
So I was really surprised when Adam said that he actually had to print out documents and send them by regular mail. Me being Estonian and having used an ID card to do everything online, hand to my heart, I think I've only posted 2 postcards in my life or used mail for that because I'm so used to doing everything digitally. So talking with E-Residents, I learn more and more all those government communications that I have been taking for granted, being an Estonian. I can see how E-Residency can change the world, like Estonia has changed. There is one question about submitting an application and how long should I wait. So it is communicated that as soon as you submit the application, you will receive an email that the PPA has received your application. Sometimes this email can go into spam mailbox. So in general, you will get an email from the PPA within 30 days that your application has been processed and this is the decision. If you have any questions, you don't know where the application is or you need to change something, you can write our email address on the bottom of our website. So, and we can check where the application is if you provide us with your name and date of birth. Or you can contact the Estonian Police and Border Guard Board directly. Basically, if you have any questions and you don't know where to turn to, contact us.
Are the owners, Andros is asking, are the owners of companies made available in a public register? So this is a really interesting question because Estonia prides itself on having an open and transparent business environment. So yes, company information is public. So it's interesting because the reason why entrepreneurs appreciate that, or why most appreciate that, is because it's that kind of open and transparency that enables them, that gives more credibility to the Estonian business environment and provides us with more trust online, with access to more fintech services. So yeah, not everyone is going to like that, but that's what we are offering through E-Residency. We're offering an open business environment. And that's also part of the reason why when you apply for E-Residency, we mentioned that you have to go through background checks, and those are conducted by the Estonian Police and Border Guard Board. So it's really important that we preserve this environment for legitimate entrepreneurs, and so information is publicly available.
All right, so I think we're nearing the end of our time here for this webinar. I just want to thank everyone for attending today, especially everyone who came in through the European Freelancers Week. We're really happy to have you here. If you have any additional questions, of course, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can find our contact information on our website, e-resident.gov.ee. Feel free to tweet us, find us on Facebook, and please visit our blog on Medium to read longer stories about e-residents and some very practical information, which, of course, I will send out to all of you after this is done. And we have a few questions regarding recording of this webinar. So we are recording this webinar. And once we take a look to make sure everything sounds good, we will put that up on our YouTube channel. And so it'll be available for anyone who didn't have time or would like to listen to this again.
So we mentioned that everyone's going to receive an email, and that's got a link to an article in it. If you're listening to this on YouTube, then you'll be able to see it in the description box as well.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for attending today, and have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.